Thank you for joining us this morning for our Maximise Your SharePoint Investment with LiveTiles webinar. Today we'll be joined by Lee Ralph from LiveTiles and Saj from Byte Software Services. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand you over to Saj.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Saj Rafiq. I'm one of the cloud solution specialists here at Bytes. And over the last 2 or 3 years, Bytes have been in the great position of selling more Office 365 licenses than any other Microsoft partner. And that gives us a great opportunity to listen to our customers to understand what's happening in the marketplace. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last 6 months really is the attitude and the change in the marketplace regards to the deployment of SharePoint. People are no longer looking at consultancy. They don't want 9 months, 12 months of consultancy and planning and all this. What they're looking to do is productizing their SharePoint deployment. They want something simple, they want something quick, and they want something to look, I hate to say this, the wow factor. People realize that if you're creating an intranet, SharePoint straight out the box doesn't have that wow factor to drive people to that site. So we're in a really great position that we went out to market. We looked at some of the products that are out on the market, and I came across LiveTiles, which is an excellent product and helps companies really develop SharePoint sites very simply and very easily. You don't need to be a designer. You don't need to have huge amounts of SharePoint design capabilities. It will out of the box do drag and drop. But I don't want to take all the thunder away from LiveTiles. So what I'm going to do really is pass over to Lee from LiveTiles, who can explain where LiveTiles has come from and do a little demo of LiveTiles. Lee, over to you.
Saj. Hello, good morning everybody. Thanks very much for joining our webinar this morning. My name is Lee Ralph and I'm the EMEA lead for LiveTiles. As we run through the webinar today over the next 40 or so minutes, what I'll do is a quick introduction on what LiveTiles is and where it came from, and then we'll follow up with a good deep dive demonstration of the product, and then save a little bit of time for questions at the end where my colleague Chris Chin, who's our Customer Success Manager, will be happy to answer any questions. So LiveTiles is a product that sits on top of Office 365 and SharePoint Online, and we have one very, very clear mission statement, and that is to enable our users to have beautiful interfaces through to their corporate data. And it's really important for us that these interfaces are engaging and they respond and they work across laptops, desktops, tablets and mobile phones, and they're a little bit easier to use and a little bit more towards these interfaces and interactions and experiences that we have in our personal lives across social media and Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn, all very finger friendly and all very icon driven. And what we found is if we enable people to have interfaces for their corporate IT that's closer to what they use in their personal lives, it's a little bit easier for them to get to grips with, a little bit easier for them to use, and it reduces the need of training and therefore the impact of business change. So LiveTiles is a product. We'll go into a bit of a demo of that product as we go through today. It's not professional services. It's an alternative to professional services, and we'll come back to that later as well. And it'd probably help if I explain a little bit about where LiveTiles came from. So LiveTiles is not professional services, it's a product. The product is licensed like a product at $1 a user a month, but it did come from a professional services company called OSC. This professional services company was founded in 2002 and then sold in 2013. I used to work for that professional services company called OSC, and the biggest project that we ever did was for Microsoft. And Microsoft actually engaged with us and invested with us to help build a set of industry solution demonstrators to help show the art of the possible of the BPOS and then Office 365 platform. Those of you on the call that have been a bit familiar with SharePoint over the years might recognize this wheel or this donut. And back in 2012, 2013, this was Microsoft's best tool for communicating the capability of Office 365 and SharePoint Online. So they'd go and see a customer and they'd load up this slide deck and they'd have this donut and then they'd tie in a conversation around search or sites or communities. But that's quite a technical conversation. That was quite hard to do, quite hard to engage the audience. So back in 2012, 2013, we worked with them to build a set of industry demos, as I mentioned, and we built one for retail, one for financial services, one for manufacturing, one for comms media, one for construction, one for education, etc., etc. And these were fully content-populated demonstrators that showed a day in the life of a typical use case where we could really convey some of the functionality of this Office 365 platform. What you're looking at on the screen there is the retail one that we made. And I'll always remember a conversation with Gap, the clothing company, out in San Francisco in the Bay Area in the States on the West Coast. And Gap owned Piperlime, Banana Republic, Athena, Old Navy, and a couple of other brands. And we went out to Gap and I showed them this retail demonstrator that we'd made for Microsoft. And they said, brilliant, we'll have one. We've got a store modernization program. And this enables us to do what we want. What we at Gap want to do is enable our colleagues in the stores to move away from this back office and this big clunky computer and get them out looking at their visual merchandising guidance and communicating cross-store and into HQ whilst still interacting with their customers on the shop floor. So they said, I love this retail demo, we'll have one. And I had to say, well, unfortunately, we're a services company. This is just a demo, but we've got a methodology and we're very agile and we'll go through the steps and we'll build you one. And Lisa Telfer, the VP of IT there, says, no, you don't understand, Lee. We just want to buy that. So going through the months and months of 2012 and 2013, we kept on hearing this story where when we showed these demonstrators, people just wanted to buy them. So we thought, wow, in this multi-tenant cloud marketplace, customers can stand up their infrastructure, so their tenants or their sites, very, very quickly, and they don't understand why they then have to spend months and months engaging a services company to build a solution. If you show a customer something that is thought-provoking, showing out the possible and meeting some of their requirements, they quite often will attach to it and want to use it. So we took that feedback, we made the product LiveTiles, which in its first version in 2013 was a responsive design canvas with apps that you dragged and dropped to create your solution, and those apps were just discrete pieces of functionality from the industry demonstrators that we've made. So we went and did that. We then sold the professional services company and took the product out as LiveTiles and made a separate product company. So LiveTiles is a separate product. It's a product company. We're an ISV, which is an independent software vendor. And we go to market directly with customers. Sometimes customers will use LiveTiles to build their solution on their own. And then we also have some customers who say, well, actually, we'd like some professional services to help point us in the right direction. So there's also that option as well. So there's a couple of different ways to use LiveTiles to build a solution. One is independently and one is with a partner. We have a partner network at the moment of about 108 partners globally. As we move on to the next section in the webinar, I'll take you through a bit of a demonstration now of a static intranet page, and then I'll go on to do a responsive design page that works across mobiles and tablets and responds appropriately based on the device format. And then we'll pause at the end for some Q&A. So what we're looking at here is an intranet. No surprises there. So we've got an intranet. We're using the modern UI to surface content from different lists and libraries in a very finger-friendly way that's very icon-driven and easy to get to grips with. With this intranet, we blend it with Yammer, and we have a Yammer slide out and a Yammer feed, and that gives us a full social intranet. Now, in my services career, when I used to work in professional services, we'd make an intranet that didn't look a million miles away from this for our customers, and that was a pretty common thing to do. The difference with this intranet is it was made in about 30 minutes using LiveTiles. I'll now run through a little bit of a demonstration of how that works. So into the product demo now, when you've got LiveTiles installed into your tenant, you have this button called Design View that I just clicked. You don't normally have that button called Design View in your Office 365 or SharePoint tenant unless you've got LiveTiles installed. So now we've come into the first differentiator, or the first special piece of LiveTiles, and that's the design canvas. Some of my customers call this a graph paper, and we're in a screen now where we can see the graph in the background. And I can start to grab and drag and drop and manipulate my apps and capability across the screen. And this is probably the first wow factor or different piece of LiveTiles. Those of you that have had some SharePoint design experience on the call will understand that this is not how SharePoint works. You can't drag and drop and manipulate the content in the canvas. So we'll drag and drop some of these things around. We'll drag and drop and delete, just cleaning myself up a bit of real estate so I can convey how the product works. So we'll delete some of these bits and pieces. I'll also pop in to my design canvas and just elongate it a bit. So this is where, in the current design view, where we're designing a static page, we're designing for a fixed resolution. We'll move on to responsive a bit later, but right now all I've done is made my canvas a bit wider just for the purpose of demonstration, so we've got a bit more space. So that was the first element, and that's the first element to discuss is the design canvas that enables a non-technical user to manipulate content for their intranet or portal very easily, as simple as using PowerPoint. It's just drag and drop. The next piece is probably the apps. So if I hit that app button in the top bar there, I'm presented with a whole wealth of apps that I can then drag and drop onto my canvas. There's currently 38 in the current version of LiveTiles. So we'll just pop a couple of these, and we'll go first of all for news. So put a news carousel. We're then going to add on a document app. We're going to pop on a My Team app. And we'll come back and talk through some of these after we've added a couple to the screen. And we'll also add on a Yammer feed. And in addition to these, we're going to add on some apps that really enable us to talk about the extensibility of LiveTiles. So let's pop on the Add Web Part app, and then we're going to pop on a code snippet tool. Okay, so what we've done very, very briefly there is added on 5 or 6 apps just to enable, and we'll pop on OneDrive as well, just to enable us to have a conversation around the capability of LiveTiles. But you can see that I've put on that capability into my screen within 2 or 3 minutes. And just to reiterate the value proposition of LiveTiles and how we're meeting the demands of this changing marketplace, I'd like to talk a little bit about the news carousel, which is this one just here. So again, to go back to my professional services career, when I engage with a customer and ask them what they'd like to have on their intranet homepage up at the whiteboard, 7 out of 10 customers would say news, some form of news. So back in 2011, 2012, I'd say, okay, you want news, let's write down your requirements, let's prioritize them, let's make you up a wireframe, and then we'll make you a news carousel. 2 or 3 days later, they've got a news carousel. But guess what? Every customer in their news carousel wants some picture, some text, scrolling left to right, and the ability to add more news articles. That is what this news app is. And that is the similar vein for all of the 38 apps in LiveTiles. They're productizing things that customers have asked for time and time again in the scope of building an intranet or a collaboration portal or a joint venture portal or a news publishing portal. So rather than building from the beginning, we've productized those things. To edit these elements, such as the news or the documents, everything has a little cog, a little configure cog that I just go ahead and click, And that pops me up a modal window, and what I can do is go and change the colours and all of the CSS stuff. So let's change my documents. Let's suppose this is my policies. I can change the colour, the size, the fonts, the shape, all of those different settings really easily through click and drag and drop. Importantly though, when I want to change where this tile is connecting to, I'll hit settings and I'll hit browse, and what this will do is pop up my SharePoint site contents and enable me to navigate through to the list or library that I'd like to surface those documents from. That's my SharePoint site contents. So that's important because that enables me to say where LiveTiles starts and LiveTiles stops. LiveTiles is not an information architecture builder. It's not going to design governance, security, or information architecture. Those things really need to be in place or delivered by one of our services partners. So this is when we go back to how we engage with customers. We engage directly. The customer may purchase LiveTiles and then go on some training. So we have actually the industry standard in SharePoint training is now delivering LiveTiles training. That's a company called Combined Knowledge. So some customers will decide to send one of their colleagues or one of their staff or one of their contractors on the Combined Knowledge training and build a solution themselves. Whereas other customers will decide to use a few days or a couple of weeks of professional services from one of our partners to help them along the path. As we move forwards, we've got OneDrive. So this app shows a connection straight through to OneDrive using the same credentials logged in as your Office 365 tenant. Then as we move right, we've got My Team. This is an amazing sort of dynamic phone directory, if you like, that shows members of your team or any group that you decide to surface with their presence information as well. And we'll come back to the capability of that as I go back into my end user view in a minute. And moving a little bit further right, we have the Yammer feed. So this enables you to blend unstructured conversational knowledge sharing with a structured intranet. So we're showing there the all company feed in the Yammer community. Though quite often a customer will show a feed from a specialist community, and we call them communities of practice, where people share knowledge around a certain area and then blend that with their structured content such as their news and team and documents. That's interesting because still to this day I get quite an aha from some of my customers when we show an intranet that has structured content and social Yammer content blended together on the same page, because there is still an element of confusion in the marketplace where some customers are wondering, well, do I build my intranet on Yammer? Do I build it in SharePoint? Where do they work together? We find it works really nicely together if you show a community or a Yammer group relevant to that page through a LiveTiles app. So that's 5 apps, if you like, pieces of functionality, 5 of the 38 to talk through. As we move further right, we've got the My Web Part and the Code Snippet app. The My Web Part app enables you to surface any web part that you can show in the SharePoint Web Part gallery. So why do this? Well, there's lots of super powerful web parts in SharePoint. Let's take the search query web part for an example. So some of our customers will use the search query web part to roll up content from different site collections into a single aggregated space or single aggregated web part. And some customers say to us, well, when are you going to build the equivalent of a search query web part as a LiveTiles app? Well, we're not. We're quite passionate about our pricing and about the capability we're bringing to customers and some of the cost and time barriers to create a solution that we believe we're removing. And we don't want to increase the cost of the product. Therefore, we're continue enhancing it with things that SharePoint doesn't do, like a nice user experience. Things that it does, like a search query web part or a content query web part or a content editor web part, we will surface through this My Web Part app. So we're making the most of the stuff that already exists, but now bringing in these very powerful web parts and enabling us to control the CSS and the look and feel of them through the LiveTiles experience. So you now get to bring these very powerful web parts, blend them with your intranet content, and make them look good really, really easily. The code snippet web part to the right is a slightly different one, because the code snippet web part enables you to iframe in content from other websites, or even make a call to perhaps a jQuery app that you've written yourself and decided to save in the site assets library. So that's another wildcard that's even more extensible than the MyWebPart app. You can just make a call to anything you like. So we drag some of those guys on and we talk through them. To go to the end user view is as simple as 2 clicks, and that takes me to my end user view. There's no SharePoint Designer, no Visual Studio, no compiling of code. It's really simple and quick. And now I can start to interact through my apps as I like to. To give you an example, this My Team one, if I hover over there, I get the presence, and I can go into an instant messaging call, which may become a voice over IP call, or however we end up. And this is brilliant to have, to bringing in value and enabling people to make the most of Skype for Business, for example, that we're seeing here in the My Team, Yammer for social communication, OneDrive, and then wrapping it all together in a single pane of glass. And what we do see time and time again is some of our customers they've got Office 365 and they've done the email migration, but when it comes on to making the most of the SharePoint and Yammer and OneDrive and Skype for Business, sometimes they're a little bit stuck. It's a little bit difficult to understand where to go or what's possible or how people are using these tools. Well, sometimes there's a bit of a high cost barrier if customers are looking to use a professional services company, and coupled with that also there's generally quite a long time delay or a long project time scale to actually get a solution up and running. But with LiveTiles we find not only is it quick and really simple, but also it's quite visually impactful. So those of you from IT on the call will understand that it's quite challenging sometimes to engage stakeholders from other business units. Well, LiveTiles makes that a bit easier because you can take a page like this to marketing, for example, or to communications, or to HR, and you can say, hey, we've mocked up a bit of a template. What do you think this looks like? And we all know that showing somebody a half-built solution or some kind of solution, it's a lot easier to get feedback than going with a list of requirements or even a blank sheet of paper. So that visual impact works quite well for engaging other business units. So this concludes the first part of our demo, which is our running through the fundamentals of LiveTiles and some of the apps and speed to solution. I'm now going to pop over to my favorite part of the demonstration, and that's building a responsive web page. When we say responsive web pages, what we mean here is a page that automatically changes and dynamically changes to suit the resolution of the device that it's being accessed from. We're very, very proud to have responsive web design as easy as making a table in Microsoft Word. This is huge for us because of my professional services career, I think we probably only delivered, say we delivered 64 projects in 2013. I think probably I can count on one hand the number of those that had mobile solutions. And that's because it's not easy. It's not easy to deliver a responsive mobile solution on Office 365. So we really worked on that with LiveTiles because we saw that as a huge value add. So I'm just dragging onto my screen now some rows and columns that enable me to start building a table, which is going to be the start of my responsive page. So we're going to nest some inside some, and then we're going to start dragging some apps into them. What I'm doing here across the top is just changing the format of how these different rows and columns are going to look across a large device, a small device, a medium device, or an extra small device. And then I can pop up to the right and I can preview them, which we'll do in a minute. As we did before, I'm going to go to my apps bar and I'm going to drag in some apps and some capability. So we're going to pop in our Yammer feed on the left. We're going to pop in news at the top because that's a really common one. News. We're going to pop in, come on news, there goes our news. We're also going to pop in the My Team. That's an amazing one, actually giving the ability to start interacting with team members over instant message or voice over IP straight from within the browser. Oh, incorrect My Team one. Let's do My Team with picture because it's a bit more impactful. Let's pop that one in. Then as we go left again, we are going to add in a map, big map. We're going to pop in a document library. This time we're going to do an icon-driven one because it's a bit more finger-friendly. And then we're going to pop in a couple of navigation tiles as well. And these are literally tiles that you can pop in of a similar look and feel, change the icons, and effectively put hyperlinks behind them. One of my customers, Saltire Taverns, is actually a hotel chain that owns a few coffee shops as well up in Scotland, purchased LiveTiles just so they could have a page with 8 buttons on it for a mobile view, like these rectangles. They just wanted to create a single page for a mobile with 8 buttons to it that went to 8 hyperlinks, which were other internal systems that they had. And at the cost, at $1 a user a month, that was able to them to justify the cost just so they could have a simple mobile interface, because that was something they were having a challenge with. To move back to my Yammer feed, what we're going to do is make that one a bit longer so we can see a bit more content in there. 1,000. And then we're going to go to something which I think is really cool, which is tile behavior. And in a responsive page, you can change the behavior of a tile or an app, or any single app, depending on how you want it to behave across different devices. So here I'm going on the Yammer feed, I'm going to say on extra small and small devices, I don't actually want that to show, because the likelihood is that our user on a small or extra small device, a phone, is likely to have the native app installed. So therefore, we don't want to use up the browser real estate, and we don't want to use the 3G bandwidth to load that content in the browser, because they're likely to have the app. And we can control that just through click and drag and drop. Okay, so we have a very, very basic responsive page there. Before I go into my end user view, I can have a look at how this is going to, I can preview how this is going to look across my different devices. So at the moment, we've got 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, with a stretched news across these 2. But we said on the tablet we wanted that to be 2 columns. So if I click that, we'll see that page respond to just 2 columns in a more appropriate manner for a tablet. As we go down even further to the extra small device, we said we didn't want Yammer to appear, and we want everything in a single column. So there we go. And so just by clicking that preview, we've gone there into a single column, and as I scroll down, you'll see it's very appropriate and very, very finger-friendly for the mobile, and Yammer has disappeared. If we want to go all the way back up, I simply click my tablet view. It takes us all the way back to our standard page. So that is real responsive design that we've made in less than 4 minutes that shows how this will work across different devices. At this point, I'm just going to run back to our slides, and we're going to recap over a couple of slides, and then we'll pause for some Q&A. So by way of a summary, LiveTiles is an investment-led organisation. So there are lots of products out there for the SharePoint space that are made because they could be made. And they're brilliant products made by very, very smart people. We're different. Our investors are constantly challenging us to build and update the product to continually fill those gaps in what customers are asking for that SharePoint and Office 365 doesn't deliver out of the box. So we're constantly enhancing the product to fill those gaps. LiveTiles is, for subscribed customers, it's released 4 times a year. So every quarter the customer receives a new update. And we really feel that with SharePoint 2016 just around the corner, and the fact that it's going to be updated monthly in its multi-tenant environment, that an ISV-led solution, so an independent software vendor and a product like LiveTiles, is the future. because the alternative is to custom code something that sits on top of this platform. The challenge with that is if you're custom coding something, then it needs to be consistently updated to meet the ever-changing patterns and practices of SharePoint 2016 that are going to change monthly. So for our customers, we take that pain away. They don't need to work with a services partner. They don't then need to keep technical support from that services partner to make sure that this bespoke solution is kept up to date. Our engineering team works hand in hand with the Office 365 engineering team in Redland. Our guys are actually based in Richmond in Washington State, and they work together every 2 weeks to recap on what the latest updates are coming into Office 365 to make sure that our product therefore meets those patterns and practices. Secondly, we're really reacting to our customers and to the requirements of the marketplace to break down barriers and to enable people to really get the most out of their Office 365 subscription. So this goes back to the point that I was saying, we engage with a lot of people that have got Office 365 and they've done the mail migration, that's worked really well for them. But they've still got these other bits like SharePoint Online, Skype for Business, Yammer and OneDrive. And we really remove that cost of engaging with a professional services company and provide them with these apps and this design canvas and some templates so that they can start to understand how to deliver solutions at a really low cost point very, very quickly. And we feel that that also enables our customers to scale out across different departments. And Two Sisters Food Group is a brilliant example of this. So Two Sisters Food Group work in the logistics and supply chain sector, and they procure food and poultry and all these good things from farms and then sell them on to supermarkets. What we were able to do with Two Sisters Food Group was actually engage to deliver them a solution inside 4 weeks by one of our partners, one of our premium partners, and then put them in a position to enable other departments such as HR and marketing to be self-sufficient in cascading this capability further and delivering department-level solutions based on a very small amount of guidance and knowledge sharing that was handed over that initial engagement. And this is because with a small amount of training, LiveTiles is really as easy as using PowerPoint. So we can start to engage other business units and really get them up to speed so they can start being self-sufficient and creating their own sites and areas. We talked a little bit about implementation time. I mean, the applications in LiveTiles are pre-built. They don't need to be coded up. It's very easy to change them. It's easy as using PowerPoint to change the color and the font and all the CSS. So it really speeds up that implementation time. And from a business change point of view, we're also very passionate about the modern UI, icon-driven navigation, finger-friendly, and responding across different devices. These are trends that we see out in the public internet space, things like the BBC website and the social media platforms such as Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and Pinterest and all these ones. And the closer we make our corporate systems to the ones that people use in their personal lives, the easier it is, the less training that's required and the less impact of business change. And just to round out, I think that LiveTiles really does give this ability to get more, to really get more value from customers' Office 365 investments and start using these other workloads, not just Exchange Online, to use this Skype for Business, Yammer, and OneDrive, and wrap it all together in a real engaging social intranet using a SharePoint Online single pane of glass. So we're very, very pleased about that. One more point, very quickly, before we go on to Q&A, and that is that there are different customer types. And we see about 3 customer types from who we engage with. And that is a customer that will purchase LiveTiles, they'll use their own resources to build their solution. We then see a customer that will say, well, we've got some SharePoint experts, we understand LiveTiles, it looks pretty straightforward, but we'd like a bit of training. And if that's the instance, we have a training partner who's the industry standard in SharePoint training called Combined Knowledge. They deliver SharePoint training and LiveTiles training. I think that comes in at something like £700 a day for the combined knowledge training. And then there are customers that say, well, do you know what, we'd like a bit of professional services engagement, we'd like somebody to point us in the right direction, and perhaps coach us and train us and do a bit of on-the-job knowledge transfer along the way, and make us experts. So then we have partners that deliver these sort of 4 to 6 week intranet in a box engagements like we did for Two Sisters Food Group. We have 108 partners globally. We have about 38 in EMEA, and in the UK there's probably, say, 8 to 10 that we could recommend. So by way of a recap, different ways that you can go about building a solution. We'd love to hear from you. Please do fill in the feedback form that Sarah will point you to. Love to hear from you. Love to hear about what you're looking to achieve with regards to your Office 365 and SharePoint environments. If it's only just for a chat or a bit of a further demo, that's great. Or if you've got any requirements, please do just drop us a line. So over to questions and answers.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So if you do have any questions, please do feel free to submit those in the questions box now. We have had a couple that have come through throughout, so I will just get those up and we can start those now. Okay, so the first question that we've had come through is, can LiveTiles work with on-premise SharePoint and Office?
Yeah, so SharePoint, so LiveTiles can work both on-premise and in the Office 365 cloud. It's a WSP that's installed into an individual site collection, and it's installed per site collection basis. So yes, it can work on both.
In the meantime, we've got another question here that asks, how deep into SharePoint is LiveTiles integrated? By this, I mean the user experience between an intranet using LiveTiles, then more team site / collaboration specific areas that are native SharePoint view. Would / could LiveTiles be integrated from every aspect of the SharePoint experience?
Okay, so when you're creating site pages in SharePoint, you create them on a page basis and you can change them from different sites that you're looking at. So it can be integrated straight down to every single site you can look at. LiveTiles can show all list information, all library information, so you can fully customize your whole SharePoint environment through the use of LiveTiles. It's fairly straightforward, as you've seen in the demonstration, just to create the sites and then just surface your content through the LiveTiles apps.
So that's everything for today. Thank you everybody for joining us for the webinar, and thank you to Saj, Lee and Chris for hosting for us.